Hey everyone, welcome to our metaphacts expert interview series, Mind the Graph. Today we're diving into Enterprise Information Architecture, short EIA, with Sebastian Schmidt, CEO at metaphacts, who will share insights on why EIA is a critical foundation for modern enterprises. We'll explore the key business challenges EIA helps solve, how it contributes to strategic goals, and its role in shaping data culture, decision-making, and AI-driven innovation. Plus, we'll get practical advice for business leaders looking to future-proof their information architecture and hear real-world examples of EIA in action. Thank you for being here, Sebastian. Let's get started.
Thanks.
So, first question. Why is EIA a critical component of modern enterprises? And what are the key business challenges EIA helps solve?
Yes, so the key business challenge, I think, in modern enterprises is not really a very new challenge. It is making optimal decisions. And we have all of those technologies at hand today with AI, and everyone wants to be data-centric. But the biggest challenge that's remaining is that to become data-centric, you really have to enable the whole organization to understand and utilize data. And that is what enterprise information architecture ultimately is about. So it brings together concepts from enterprise architecture, where we are more looking at the business and business processes, and information architecture, where we're looking at the IT systems, how data is stored and processed. And bringing that together and bringing data in context of that, that is what we are changing with enterprise information architecture, creating a culture of data centricity and enabling AI-savvy users in the organization.
That's really interesting, and it sounds like the role of EIA can really be transformative. So what kind of business goals would you say well-structured EIA contributes to achieving?
So the core business goal that we try to achieve with enterprise information architecture is bringing together business and IT, allowing them to collaborate and exchange information on a joint map of the organization. And through that, making the organization data-centric. Because that allows the users to take better decisions based on data and allows us to also utilize data with AI, we can make decisions that allow us to get faster to the market with new products, to reduce cost in existing processes, and overall better understand the organization.
To summarize, how do you define enterprise information architecture? And you have already touched on how it incorporates concepts from information architecture and enterprise architecture, but how does it differ from these or bring these together?
So when we look at enterprise architecture and information architecture as existing disciplines, they are both very independent efforts. With enterprise architecture looking at the business processes, looking to understand down to IT also, but primarily from a business view, from a process view, and how to be able to transform the business and processes. And the information architecture or many other aspects of what's also happening in data governance in IT are looking more at IT systems, how we process data, how we store data, which is in the end about the same data, but from a completely different perspective. And enterprise information architecture utilizes a semantic model which allows us to integrate those things. So that semantic model takes the business object, the kind of core assets, the data assets or aspects in the organization, and how we exchange them via business processes, and enriches them with all of the context of IT systems, where they are stored, the people interacting with them responsible for a specific process, for a specific system, the context to other business objects. So creating that map of the organization where we can really truly understand data and utilize it correctly.
So are data scientists in the company now shaking with fear or full of joy because of that fact?
I think it's bringing joy to everyone, because so far each of those different groups, from the business user to the data scientist to the IT, have worked in their silos and had challenges understanding each other. And what we are enabling here is that they all can talk about the same thing. They can collaboratively work much more efficient and can bring in their specific expertise into that process.
So essentially, you're doing everyone a favor by making them talk finally.
I think they're doing themselves a favor with that, yes.
Yeah. So, as you said, EIA brings together the enterprise architecture and the information architecture and bridges between those different departments. How does it relate to other data documentation and integration efforts in the organizations?
Yes, so one of the key efforts at documenting and capturing data is currently happening on the IT side around data governance with things like data catalogs or data lakes. However, this is a very IT-centric activity. So this information is important, and it is good that this is captured because it lays a foundation for enterprise information architecture. However, it's not accessible to the business. The business uses completely different terms to talk about certain data points compared to how they are stored in an IT system. The business would rarely know the name of a table or column of how this data is stored. And that is what we can bridge via the semantic model in the enterprise information architecture, where we then have the IT systems and what's in there as the context around the primary thing being the term of how the business talks about it.
You said a semantic model. Can you go a little bit in depth on that? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so the semantic model is the idea of modeling it with its context, with the correct meaning of what each of those things mean. Which means we have a very extensible model that also adapts to the needs of each organization. We have standard things that we capture in there, like a business process or business process step, an IT system, and an IT responsible for something. But we can expand that to anything else that is important in a specific organization, like specific regulations in certain countries or specific laws that affect how data is processed and, for example, to be allowed to be utilized. And that's the benefit of that. So we move to a model that correctly describes the data, captures all that context, and is near infinitely extensible.
What role does EIA play in shaping the organization's data culture?
So for the organization's data culture, what that means is we have to create a culture of documenting. I have to not just document where the data resides and how it's processed in IT systems, but I also have to capture in which business process is it used. How does the business address this data? Which other business objects are related to it? In which context are we utilizing this data? Which allows us then to also understand how to correctly interpret it. And this documentation culture is the basis for the data culture. And that data culture, again, is the foundation to create an AI-savvy organization. Because if people understand data and they correctly interpret data, then they can also understand what they get from an AI and correctly make decisions based on that.
What role does EIA play in supporting decisions for international, globally active organizations with very localized businesses?
So if I have a very global organization with a very localized, optimized business, which we see for most global organizations, even more so with more heavily regulated or complex products, then the challenge of utilizing data and making globally smart decisions becomes even harder, because very often teams only have access to the data in their specific location. They only understand what they are working with regularly, but any kind of change to a business process or how we are utilizing data just locally might not be as optimal as if we could take it globally. So what's the interesting thing with enterprise information architecture is that we can create kind of a mapping and understanding of how each country, how each region is building a specific business process in their IT systems, which specific regulatory requirements are influencing that, which specific market characteristics are influencing that, and making that transparent for when we centrally or locally process this information to make a new decision from. So that means through that approach of documenting all that context, we lay the foundation of making a smart decision that is adequate for the organization as a whole globally, but also then for each of the locations.
It's interesting. Never thought about it that way. But so essentially you're taking local decisions to a global scale.
Yes.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about EIA, but your solution is also about implementing AI to utilize all the data and the metadata you have. So how does emerging technology like AI and knowledge graphs support EIA?
To successfully implement an enterprise information architecture, we have to combine all of those different data points and metadata, capture all of that context, as we already talked about a semantic model. And the knowledge graph technology is the ideal technology for that. It natively supports semantic models. It allows me to expand with as many relations and context around every data point that I need. And that is why knowledge graphs should be the foundation of every enterprise information architecture. At the same time, this is only how we are storing it. So it's more looking at, again, from an IT perspective. And the business needs a much easier way to interact with. Ideally, a way of just natural language talking to that system, which we can achieve with an AI. And talking to it in your own language does not only mean you're talking with the language you speak in your country, but it means you talk with the specific terms that you are dealing with every day, because the enterprise information architecture has captured that via the business objects, via the business glossary and terms that the business uses, and can relate all of the data and everything else to that, making it very accessible and easy for every user. But AI can do even more, because with modern agentic AI, we can even get to automation of certain decisions, suggestion of actions, supporting users in the process of modeling context. And all of that makes this even more scalable and faster to implement.
So just out of interest, a little in the future, do you think it could become like some sort of a colleague you just like talk to and come with a question and say, oh, I'm not sure about process X, Y, whatever, please make me a suggestion based on the data we have?
I think this is not even such a future thing anymore. This is the reality of where we are already today, where you can simulate such decisions, such questions already on such a system.
So essentially you're making people talk to the IT finally.
Yes.
So as I understand it, you bridge the gap between what a person that is trying to make informed business decisions is making, and bridge it with the information architecture, so all those data is accessible in an understandable and natural way, instead of like browsing databases by hand, essentially, making it more accessible, right?
Yes, so the core idea is business users don't understand databases. Business users don't understand how data is stored there, how to query it, how to get access to it. So I always need an intermediary. I need a data scientist. I need the IT to make this accessible to them in some way. But that means we are slowing everything down. The business can't even ask for the right information, because they don't even know what is available in the organization. And to eliminate that challenge, that obstacle in making smart decisions, we are making it a landscape or a map of the entire organization's data landscape that the business can browse and understand and get access to what they really need.
What advice would you give to business leaders looking to future-proof their enterprise information architecture?
So if you want to be sure that you have a future-proof implementation of enterprise information architecture, the first thing is obviously the kind of technology choice. You need a tool that supports that. You need the underlying technology that can scale with that, like a knowledge graph. And you need a way how people can easily interact with it that helps you to automate as much as possible in the task and support the people interacting with it. So you need a matching AI. But technology is only one side of this. The other thing that's very important is building that culture. So really engaging stakeholders across the organization, from the business to the IT and training them, ensuring that they have an understanding of how do I correctly model that, what kind of context is relevant to be modeled. So how do I use the enterprise information architecture to contribute to it, but also to take something from it. And that is something that needs time. But what we have seen over many implementations is that the more people are engaged and are enabled to do this, they will see the benefits they get out of it on their own, and that will encourage them to further contribute to it. And once this is an established process, it is something that's not going away anymore.
So, as you are talking about implementation, I would ask you, could you share maybe a real-world example of a significant impact your solution had on a company?
Yes, I have a number of examples for that. So we, for example, worked with a global organization that was growing over many years through acquisitions of other companies, which means they had by now a gigantic IT landscape of all of their initial systems, all of those different IT systems they acquired, different processes spanning over partial sets of those systems, processes they already had partially integrated. And they realized they completely lost track of that entire complexity. So whenever they had to upgrade systems, migrate systems, or when they wanted to consolidate systems, they had to get in external consultants to make an assessment of those systems, something that took easily weeks to months. And there was always a one-time effort for that specific change. And the next time, systems already had changed again, so someone had to make that same assessment again. And what we enabled through the implementation of the enterprise information architecture is that they had that at hand as information, mapping really all the way from what's the business impact of such a change to what is the IT impact, and allowing their people to make such assessments in seconds or minutes, or even simulate different scenarios on top of that data. Another example was in the product lifecycle management space, where there was really a very specific problem in the product lifecycle management where the team wanted to have more information to make better products. Specifically, they were interested in maintenance reports and understanding their supply chain and risks in the supply chain. And getting access to that data globally from each location where this was treated different was really tough, and then also to make sense of that data. So implementing an enterprise information architecture helped them to locally capture context and data correctly, map it all up together, and then create a central view of that, helping them to ultimately build better products.
So, you just touched on those points, telling me how you are implementing the stuff, how you go about educating people about your approach. But why is metaphacts my partner for EIA?
So at metaphacts, we are working for over 10 years with Knowledge Graph. So this technology stack is really the foundation of everything we are doing and how we have built our product Metafactory. And it is a collaborative tool for everyone to contribute in creating a semantic model and creating an enterprise information architecture with the AI to then explore, discover, but also assist people in the modeling experience. At the same time, we have a team of solution architects that can help in the implementation, not just of the software and how to manage that, but also of how do I really do enterprise information architecture in the organization. We have a complete training curriculum with the Metaphacts Academy that touches on the needs of everyone from the DevOps operating the software all the way to the business users, and provides them the necessary training. And we have implemented that with so many customers over the last 10 years that I think by now have that complete portfolio of what you need to be successful in that implementation.
How big of a stretch is it to educate people to really take advantage of the system once it's implemented?
So educating people on enterprise information architecture is very different based on their role. We have people in IT, people in enterprise architecture that are more familiar with how do I model data, how do I model such information, how do I work with, for example, data about business processes and connect that to IT systems. And then we have business users, they might have never touched any of that. They might not have any exposure to that, but they are the domain expert in that field, in that specific process, which means they are at least as important to get their information. And that means we need very tailored training for those. And that is something we have also combined in our academy, where we have for each role a specific training curriculum tailored to where they usually start from to get them ready for enterprise information architecture.
How can organizations start implementing EIA or an EIA strategy?
So our recommendation is, because this is something affecting the whole organization, to start top down. The most successful approach is one where the organization says we want to become more data centric, we want to become AI savvy and ready for everyone to utilize data. And we understand that we need an enterprise information architecture to achieve that, to combine what we have already invested into data governance, what we have already invested into enterprise architecture, and bring these together in the way necessary. From there, it is educating the people, getting them on board, and implementing the right tool to collaboratively work on that. We don't see that as always possible. And as I have mentioned in one of the customer examples, you might start from a very specific use case where you see that you have a challenge of making the right decisions based on data, implement it there and grow it from there further. But eventually, because of the breadth of people you have to address and the transformation you want to have in the organization, you should make this a top-down initiative.
What are some of the challenges enterprises face when starting their EIA journey, and how can they tackle them or prevent them from the outset?
So one of the core obstacles we see in implementation, that's not really a challenge, it's more of a misunderstanding or a misperception, is people being super concerned of getting it right. Especially people who have not been exposed much to modeling yet and to building an enterprise information architecture. They feel like, well, do I capture the context correct? Is this a business object in the way I should be modeling it? And the reality is you will not get it right. Not on the first try. This is something where you need a few steps to go through and you have to learn. But with every step you take, with every person you involve in that process and where you create a shared understanding, you're taking a step forward and you're creating value for the organization. So even a partial information architecture, one that is not perfectly modeled yet, is better than having nothing. It means you're already creating some awareness about some of the data. You are allowing people to access it and use it. And by using it, then also understanding which other context they would have wanted to see modeled with it, so that it becomes easier for others to utilize it. So the most critical thing is just getting started, taking that first step, and accepting that not everything is going to be perfect right away, but you will step by step get there.
So essentially, it's also that people along the way start realizing what they can actually do with that technology or that implementation, and then they are getting ideas by themselves and like expand from there, right?
Yes. So very often it's a more abstract concept when you get started with it, and we can train people to a certain degree, but then for their specific organization, for the way they work today, they have to see how to best implement it, and that is something that you just learn by doing it.
So talking about implementation, what are some of the challenges enterprises might face when starting their EIA journey, and how can you tackle them or prevent the outset?
The biggest obstacle in that implementation, which is mostly a misconception, is people want to get it all right. And they just need to realize that this is a complex endeavor. As much as we can support it with tools and education, it needs time to settle into the minds of people of how exactly this works. Which means in that first step, they're not going to get everything right. You just have to get started. You have to take that first step. You have to start providing that context, creating consents collaboratively between the teams on how to model certain data. And as you are moving on with each step you take, with each agreement you achieve, with each extension to your model, you are actually creating value. You are making data more transparent for everyone, and you're getting onto that path to a data-centric and an AI-savvy organization. And that is what you just have to realize and just jump into it and take that first step.
So how does metaphacts facilitate the creation and maintenance of an EIA?
So for enterprise information architecture, we have implemented in our Metafactory tool a collaborative environment where all those users can jointly work on their enterprise information architecture, each with their specific views on the aspects that are important to them, where they can query all of that information, where they can pull out all the information they need to take a decision. And that platform is based on open standards or knowledge graphs, highly scalable. So giving the organization the foundation to implement their own enterprise information architecture.
So one last question from my side. If you had like 2 sentences to sell me your solution, what would they be?
If you want to set up your organization to be faster, to be smarter, to make better decisions, then you need an enterprise information architecture, because that is ultimately how you get your people data savvy, AI savvy, and ready to take the best decisions possible.
Thank you. Perfect.